Alright, so Google has just announced the new Pixel Watch 4, and on the surface, it looks a lot like the Pixel Watch 3, but they've actually made some pretty substantial updates here. Like there's a new display panel, which is a lot brighter, there's longer battery life, there's a new AI workout detection feature, and it's the first smartwatch of its kind to come with emergency satellite communication systems. So I just had an extremely immersive experience with the Pixel Watch 4 last week, and they haven't yet sent out full review units for in-depth testing, but I did get a ton of time with them last week where I got to test out all the new features. And in this video, I'll be going over everything that you need to know about the new Pixel Watch 4, including an in-depth look at how that new satellite communication system works, with what it can do and what it can't do for that matter, which is important. And in a few weeks, I'll have my full in-depth review of the Pixel Watch 4, so make sure to subscribe to get a notification when that video comes out. So the new Pixel Watch 4 comes in two different sizes, so a larger 45mm model and then a smaller 41mm model. And here's how both of them look on my 183mm circumference wrist, and here's how they look on a smaller 158mm circumference wrist, just so you can get an idea of how they size up. And then for availability, you'll be able to pre-order them on August 20th, so the day that this video is coming out, and then they'll actually ship in the beginning of October. So for materials, the Pixel Watch 4s are made out of aluminum for the main case, and they actually refined the shape of the case slightly where it has rounder corners than before. And another change they made is that the back of the Pixel Watch 4 is completely smooth now versus the Pixel Watch 3, where you can actually feel the edges of the heart rate sensor a little bit. And the display on the Pixel Watch 4 is protected with Corning Gorilla Glass, and for the display itself, so this is a new display panel, which is what they're calling their actual 360 display. So what they did is actually create a domed display, and literally the actual display is domed, not just the glass, but the display itself. But what this new dome display let them do is have 10% more screen real estate that kind of spills over the edge, so it's a little bit more glanceable. And this new display is also 50% brighter than before with a peak brightness of 3000 nits. Now, one of the complaints with previous Pixel watches was the bezel, so basically the distance from the outside of the watch to the display itself. But they've reduced this as well by around 15%. So with that, as well as their new actual 360 display, it's a pretty big improvement all around. And they've also made some strides with battery life, where the larger 45mm model is supposed to get up to 40 hours of battery life, and the smaller 41mm model is supposed to get up to 30 hours of battery life. So it may not be a full 2 days, but it still should reduce that daily battery anxiety, where you should still be able to do a ton of activity tracking as well as do sleep tracking and not necessarily have to charge your watch every single day. And then for charging, they also have a new charging dock versus the magnetic charging cable from before, and they've also made that faster as well, where the Pixel Watch 4 is supposed to charge up to 25% faster than before. But with the charging dock, so the thinking here is that you'll be able to see stuff like the time, battery, as well as time to fully charge a little bit easier. Oh, and really quick, if you're finding the information in this video to be useful, do me a quick favor, just hit that like button down below. It's a small thing that you can do that'll help this video and the channel out quite a bit, and I appreciate it. And then on the smartwatch side of things, so they've updated the processor, which is supposed to be 25% faster than before, but more importantly, they've also made it more efficient, where it's supposed to use 50% less power, which definitely directly translates into that longer battery life. And there's also Gemini AI that you can access just by raising your wrist, so you don't necessarily have to say, hey, you know what I'm saying. So all you have to do now to access Gemini AI is just raise your wrist. And it's not just stuff like asking the weather. So you can also do stuff like starting a bike ride, and you can even do stuff like accessing information from your email if you have that set up. So something like, what time's that appointment that one guy sent me? And then one more thing is that it's also supposed to have smarter smart replies for text that leverages Gemini to come up with quick responses that are in context. One thing to note about this Gemini AI feature, though, is that it still requires a data connection like with your phone, so it doesn't do the processing on the watch itself. And the Pixel Watch 4 is also supposed to have an improved speaker, where it's supposed to be louder and more clear, and they've also improved the haptic feedback by around 15%. And then they're also bringing in their new material user interface theme to the Pixel Watch 4, where this refreshed design is supposed to be more expressive and also more like personalized, where interacting with it is supposed to be a little bit more fluid and a little bit faster. It's still the same familiar UI for the most part, but there's some new things that you may notice, like some of the buttons actually sort of like shape shift and kind of like hug the sides of the display. But there is this kind of cool new feature where if you change the color of your watch face, it'll also translate that color into the rest of the interface. Okay, so on the health side of things, so there's really no changes on the heart rate sensor side of things, where it's utilizing basically the same sensors before. But honestly, the Pixel Watch 3 was a pretty accurate sensor, at least for my testing. But they have made some improvements with sleep tracking, where they claim it's supposed to be 18% more accurate than before. And then in addition to blood oxygen saturation tracking, which was there before, they've also now added a new skin temperature sensor. And then on the fitness and sports side of things, so they've added 10 new sport profiles to the Pixel Watch Watch 4. So there's now going to be 50 sport profiles to choose from. And they're also going to be introducing a new AI-powered activity detection feature. So what it's going to do is monitor your heart rate as well as the accelerometer and attempt to detect what kind of activity that you're doing without you having to manually start an activity. And then when it does detect that you've done an activity, it'll just send you a recap afterwards, letting you know what it detected. And it does allow you to choose the exact activity that it was. And it's actually designed to learn what kind of activities that you're doing, so it should be more accurate over time with that activity detection. And this is definitely something I'll be covering in my in-depth review, so stay tuned. And they're also launching a new screen mirroring feature for cycling, and I think their official name for this is Bike Real-Time Streaming. But with this feature, you'll be able to see your watch data in real time on your phone, so you can mount your phone on your handlebars and see your data without necessarily having to look on your wrist. Now, one thing they aren't introducing with this new feature, though, is any Google Maps integration. So you won't be able to see your watch data as well as a map at the same time. However, if you are using the Google Maps app for navigation, you'll still get the pop-up alerts over your watch data. You just won't be able to see the map and your watch data at the same time. And for tracking outdoor activities, the Pixel Watch 4 now has a dual frequency or dual band GNSS chipset. So with this kind of technology, its aim is to deliver higher accuracy in challenging environments where objects may actually interfere with the sky. But the highlight feature of the Pixel Watch 4, and it's actually a first of its kind feature for a smartwatch, is that it has built-in emergency satellite communications on the watch itself without the need for a smartphone, a Wi-Fi connection, or even a cell phone signal. And the reason this is big is that they've jumped ahead of Apple as well as even Garmin, and Garmin's really well known for their satellite communication devices. So with this new satellite communication feature, so this is designed to be an SOS feature where in the event of emergency, you can initiate this to attempt to connect to emergency services via satellite. So this is where it can work outside of cell phone coverage. And at launch, they're going to be launching this in the contiguous United States, but they'll be looking at other regions in the future. So what happens when you first initiate an SOS is that it'll first check for a GPS signal. And the reason for this is that your location is sent to the emergency services so they can actually find you. And then it'll go through a quick list of questions to understand your situation better, like what kind of emergency that you're in, like if you're lost, hurt, or even witnessed a crime, if there's any additional scenarios or things that the emergency services kind of need to be aware of, if you're alone or if you're with other parties, as well as even how long the situation has been going on. And then from there, it'll ask you if you want to contact your personal emergency contacts at the same time if you have those set up. And then it'll guide you on how to actually connect to satellites. And this part's actually pretty interesting. So the first thing that you want to do is have a clear view of the sky. And this is going to be very similar to other satellite communication devices like Garmin's InReach devices, where satellite communications is different than like normal GPS for tracking activities, where normal like GPS and GNSS, that stuff is pretty forgiving where you can sometimes even get a signal like indoors. With true satellite communications, you generally need more like an unobstructed view of the sky. So you'll first need to rotate your body to kind of orient yourself properly with satellites. So this requires you to kind of position your arm to orient the antenna, which is actually located on the left-hand side of the watch, to the correct location in the sky. And then it does have a nice arrow to kind of show you which direction to turn. And what's kind of interesting here is that they said your arm and your body kind of like acts as an extension to the antenna. So you actually can use this feature without wearing the watch, but if you do wear it, it actually can amplify the signal. But as soon as you get your body in the correct position and establish that connection, it'll send that first message to emergency responders. And the response time can vary, of course, depending on your situation, but once you do receive a response, you can then type out a reply providing more information they may need to know, like, yes, I definitely need help right away, or maybe there's no longer an emergency. And if for some reason your arm isn't oriented correctly when you do try to reply, it'll then guide you through the same steps to establish a satellite connection. But here's some pretty interesting stuff about this new feature. So first off, it can send your location like I was mentioning before, but it can also send your health information. Like if you have any health conditions or even your blood type set up in the watch, it can send that as well. And then you can even send your battery level just so people can get an idea of how long your watch may last. And in regards to the battery life, in this SOS mode, it'll also switch to a lower power mode where it'll save on battery life by like lowering the brightness as well as turning off the always on display. And another thing that's kind of interesting is that they're actually leveraging Garmin's emergency response center for these communications. So these are real humans that you're actually going to be communicating with. So they'll be able to determine what kind of response is appropriate. Now, as you can tell, there is a bit of interaction with this feature where you have to orient your arm correctly to get a satellite signal, as well as interact with the emergency responder. So this is meant to be used in a similar fashion as if you had the ability to dial 911, just without a cell phone signal. So this isn't really meant to work in conjunction with their other safety features that the watch has, like their loss of pulse feature, the fall detection, as well as the car crash detection, where in those situations, you may not have the ability to actually position your arm and have that interaction. And then when it comes to cost, so this is actually going to come free with the Pixel Watch 4 for 2 years, but they haven't come up with a follow-up cost after that 2 years quite yet. So I think they're really just going to like gauge interest and see how it goes. But do note that this new feature is all about the satellite communications part of this and doesn't involve like any costs that are incurred with the actual emergency services, depending on your particular situation. That's not part of this. So this new feature is going to be available on all LTE models of the Pixel Watch 4. And what's kind of nice about this is that you don't need the actual cell phone plan. You just need the LTE capable model, which has the necessary hardware. And what's also nice about this is that if you do buy an LTE model outside of the US, if you travel to the US, this feature actually still will work. And then lastly, the Pixel Watch 4 is also going to be repairable in the event something breaks. So the display, the battery, and some other parts can actually be replaced. So they made it so you can actually open up the case with these little screws that are hidden underneath the watch strap attachment. Now, other than the Pixel Watch 4 itself, they're also going to be rolling out a very interesting new Fitbit Health Coach feature. And this is actually going to be introduced a little bit after the Pixel Watch 4 ships, but this is going to involve a massive overhaul to the Fitbit app where it's supposed to be more personalized and deliver information that you actually want to know about, but also offer personalized coaching. And I'm not just talking about workout coaching here. It's supposed to be an all-encompassing health coach, as the name implies, where it's supposed to cover fitness, sleep, as well as general health and wellness. So we've definitely had AI-powered coaching before, but it's generally been more on the fitness and workout side of things. This is supposed to deliver more holistic guidance all around. So the first thing is a revamped user interface where it's broken out into 4 tabs. So there's a today view with highlighted information at the moment, a fitness tab, a sleep tab, and then a health tab. And then on top of the today tab, it'll highlight important information like your steps, your daily readiness score, as well as your sleep score. But what I personally appreciate about this new layout is that they highlight your weekly cardio load that you've accumulated for the week, as well as a progress bar showing how you're doing on hitting your cardio load target, which is a new feature that they introduced last year. And then below that, so this area right here shows your sleep insights. So this is actually going to adapt throughout the day to show you pertinent information at the time. So like in this example right here, this is likely right after you woke up. And then later on in the day, maybe after your workout, it'll give you a summary of how your workout went. And then at the end of the day, it can give you a breakdown of your entire day and maybe even suggest like how much sleep that you should get. And then there's also this coach button down here. So here's that AI part of it that's powered by Gemini, where you should be able to ask it a variety of questions, maybe like, how have I been sleeping? Or how do I improve my sleep? Or maybe how is my HRV trending? But it should go beyond that as well. Like, let's say I got a poor night of sleep. I should be able to ask it like, what kind of workout is going to be appropriate for me considering my sleep score? And it's not just about asking it questions. It should give you suggestions based on your data. So let's say I had a hard workout one day and I didn't sleep well last week. It may suggest that I get to bed early tonight to get some extra recovery time. And then on the workout side of things, you should also be able to ask it to create customized workout plans based on your goals. But as we all know, life happens and sometimes these plans don't really work out as intended. These are actually designed to adapt to your particular workout schedule. So let's say I feel more like strength training today versus running, but running is on my plan. Well, you can do strength training today and the workout plan should adapt to adjust running to a different day. But for what I've seen so far, this isn't just about a redesign. There's actually some really cool adaptive stuff here. So I'm really excited to test this out for y'all. But overall, I think it's a pretty compelling list of new features that are coming out this year, not only the hardware side of things with the Pixel Watch 4, but also on the software side of things. Anyhow, stay tuned for my in-depth review of the Pixel Watch 4, which will be coming out in a few weeks. And if you found the information in this video to be useful, do me a favor and hit that like button. And in the meantime, have fun out there, and we will see you in the next video.